Nequela, how representative is the Netflix show Top Boy of real life gang world?
I'd say the representation of Top Boy is there's a reality to it in some parts of London, in some parts of the environment where deprivation is, where there isn't a lot of opportunity for young people. I'd say there is a real reality to it, but there's also a fabrication to it. But much of the time, you can see a lot of Top Boys reality be played out in London streets quite often in regards to young people in gangs, in regards to people selling drugs, knife crime, gun crime, and just being actively involved in street activity.
Okay. So let's roll back the years, Nequela, because doing a bit of research, I heard you got banged up at 18 years old.
Yeah.
Let's roll back the years. So you were born in Brixton.
Yeah, that's correct.
What was your family life like growing
So
up?
family life I was quite sheltered. So we lived in Mitesfield. My mum lived in Mitesfield from the 80s, and my brother and sister grew up there, but it wasn't the best environment for them. So with what my mum was seeing was happening for my brother, she made a choice and a decision to move us out of Brixton by the time I was about 3 or 4. So my early recollection of Mitesfield was it's very vague, but we moved to Clapham, and since we moved to Clapham, I'd say our reality, our our safety was more at the priority of what my mum was trying to achieve for us. At the time, we had the influx of the yardies. There was a lot of drug selling, crack selling. People was being murdered around them times. So at that point, my mum done the best thing she could for us in regards to moving us into a safer environment for us to thrive.
And how was school?
School. So I was an excelling student, to be honest with you. I went to a Catholic school, so I originally went to an all black nursery. So I kind of learned and grew amongst my own people in terms of staying within my community and my culture. And then I started to branch out when I went to reception. I went to a Catholic reception school, and then I went on throughout into primary and secondary school where it was Catholic. School for me in my early days was, I would say, experimenting. I was experimenting a lot in them early days in terms of myself, in terms of my sexuality, and just in being inquisitive to life. Especially when your parents or my mum wasn't really that open with exposing us to the world and things that children shouldn't have been seen. I weren't exposed to that kind of lifestyle. I was quite sheltered. We came from a house of love and nurture, and I came from a single parent household. Despite having my dad in play, my dad wasn't an active father. So yeah, it put the strain on my mum to provide for all 3 kids. And to be honest with you, done and still is doing the best. And yeah, I'd say that in terms of upbringing, we got a good start. I think where we went wrong was when we started to make choices for ourselves. And off the back of that, my dad is a crackhead. So my dad's taken drugs all my life in theory of knowing. And that has had an effect in terms of the relationship I have with him and how I consider him to be in terms of the role he plays or has played in my life, the absent roles he's played in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's growing up with feelings of resentment towards my dad as I got older and started to unveil some sort of truths and reality of his lifestyle and what he was really about, to be honest with you. But my mum, yeah, strongest woman I'll ever know in terms of being able to give us opportunities and believing in us, loving us. I think much of the time, I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's love, it's stability, it's having someone that's got, I say it comes back through love, affection, and teaching us morals, boundaries, and implementing something in us. And my mum put a lot of that, especially I would say, into myself. I went drama school. I played the violin at grade 5. I played football for Fulham Girls. I was the captain for Wandsworth Girls. I almost got signed to run for England when I was younger. So there was a lot of investment that my mum put in behind us. And I would say that was because we moved out of a certain environment for us to be able to thrive again.
So that's quite interesting, because you're saying as you're growing up in your teenage years, you did have hobbies. You're involved in sports.
Everything.
I read you that you were also playing the violin at school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's quite unusual, actually, because when you speak to people who ended up joining a gang, usually they're quite bored. They go to school, they dick about, they don't do too much in school, they don't have any hobbies, they're bored, and then they're susceptible to joining a gang. How did you get roped into joining a gang at a young age?
I'd say in your response to young people or people joining gangs due to boredom, I'd say in my day, I was born in the 80s, so my day doesn't really coincide with this kind of generation today. But I would say much of my friends and much of us who were about this road life, we were on the road, on the streets, doing up criminal activities. We had knowledge. We were educated. We were intelligent. We did activities. We were involved in extracurriculum. But the only thing that what it led down to was wanting nicer things. And for me, I'd say how I got roped into it, I would say I didn't want £30 trainers no more. I didn't want trainers from the market. I didn't want trainers from East Street no more. I wanted to have things. I wanted a JD sports bag. I wanted to have things that other young people had. But at that time, I didn't understand that where my mum was spending her money, it was for us to be better people. It wasn't based on materialistic things. But when you're young, materialistic things are the most important things over the food in your belly and the roof over your head, because at that point it has no significance. Clothes, tracksuits, trainers, being able to fit in amongst the crowd of people that you're in and fit into the environment, I think that for me was where I started to want to explore a little bit more in terms of getting money. And I was at a point where I started selling weed. I started selling cannabis to the students in school. And then it just started to grow from there. I'd say where I lived also as well was a big contributing factor, because where I live, there was a substance misuse house. So it was St. Mungo's, and it's a rehabilitating service for substance misusers. Unfortunately, nobody was being rehabilitated. So there was a big house from about this end of the road to that end of the road, took up most of the road, and everybody in there was substance misusers. There was about 500 people in there that took crack, heroin, or other substances. And as they would travel through to Clapham Common, they will come through like where my area is, where my little estate was. And eventually we started befriending each other. And I kind of realized there's a need out here, can start to make money. So I bought my first 8-ball, and I started shotting crack, just crack on its own. And then I started to realize for me to make real money, it goes hand in hand. So at this time, my knowledge of what I thought I knew was quite small. And then when I started speaking with the substance misusers, my knowledge gained a bit more. My knowledge expanded in terms of what was the best way to put myself out there, to profile myself out to these adults that are drug users. And the best way was to become friends. So I befriended them, they befriended me, and it was like a mutual exchange. And throughout them years that I did sell drugs around the area, I also took change. And a lot of people didn't take change. So I had a very good friendship with quite a lot of these people. And off the back of it, I knew how to deal with these people because my dad was a substance misuser as well. So it wasn't something that I was out of my comfort zone. It was seeing an opportunity and exploiting that hole in it.
So you're 14, 15, around this age?
Yeah, I was around 13. When I started selling crack and heroin, I was 12, 13. Yeah.
Wow. And the first thing I think, of a 13-year-old shotting is, how are you not scared of the people you're dealing with, and how are they taking you seriously at 13 years old?
I wasn't scared. I've never really been scared of outside fare and stuff like that. I feel like if something's going to happen, it's going to happen. It is what it is. I can hold my own. I've always been able to hold my own. And when I was younger, I was quite masculine, very masculine in terms of how I presented and my attitude, my demeanor. So for me, it was, I think I came across more fearful than they became across more fearful to me. And yet again, it's understanding when people take drugs, they then become like childlike. So they're not really an adult, are they? They're abusing themselves in that sense to where they're vulnerable. And seeing when someone's vulnerable, how you can exploit that loophole. I learned how to exploit that loophole, and it became a fair gain. I have had situations where I've been in predicaments where the crackhead has chosen to take my drugs. Yeah, I've been in that predicament before, and it almost led to me going to stab him out of the principle, out of the sheer fact that
at 13, 14.
Yeah, the sheer fact that if you let one person do it, they're all going to do it. They all communicate with each other. So why am I going to post up out here and be a victim or be vulnerable? That play doesn't work. So whether or not I was going to stab him or not, it's a matter of putting that fear in him. And I had to put that fear into that person, because at the end of the day, you're taking something that you haven't paid for. And I had a very rough attitude when I was younger. I didn't have a conscience like how I have one now to understand right and wrong in it. But you take off of me, I'm going to take back off you. That's kind of the rules of the road. So someone has to learn a lesson somewhere. So yeah, I was willing to protect what I was out there for, and that was money.
So you were carrying at 13, 14. Where would you get a knife from at that age?
All right. So my friends, like my group of friends when I was younger, the boys always used to have knives. So they always used to have like hunting knives, small flickies, butterfly knives. They were just easily accessible. So we always had a knife. Like when I used to go to school, your top blazer pocket, I used to carry a butterfly knife in the top blazer pocket just for show. But because it was easily accessible, you get your hands on things that are easily accessible. If it's coming your way and you don't have to pay for it, you haven't gone out the way and it just lands there, it's an opportunity, isn't it? So at 13, 14, we was accessing things that people shouldn't be accessing as adults, let alone kids.
When did you first experience real world violence?
When I started to experience real violence, I'd say from year 7. So my first day in year 7, I had a fight. And all the way up to my last day in year 11, I fought throughout the whole of my school years. I went to a school in Croydon. So I lived in Clapham. I'm from the end, South London. Back in the day, Croydon wasn't considered to be South London. It was considered to be outer London. So I had to travel all of that way to school. So I got victimized. Yeah, greatly. I got victimized. I was bullied. I was that girl that stood out. So after a while, I had to change my attitude and become like those girls that were causing the problem and troubling me. And eventually I became the perpetrator. I became the person that started to put fear into everybody else. I was that person, because in this life, there's 2 types of people, innit? There's people that take the shit the hood throws at them, and there's people that don't. I took the shit. I now have to not take the shit. So I have to become someone that I didn't in particularly want to become, but because of how the roads are built out there, sometimes it forces your hand to be a different person than what your real conscience is inside, innit? So that became me. I left that little girl Nequela back in Clapham, and I became somebody that I didn't even know for a couple of years. But I adjusted to being that person in this skin, innit?
And at what point did things really escalate? Like I mentioned at the start, you ended up getting banged up in prison at 18 up in Scotland. Where was the inflection point where it escalated from,
I'd say,
scraps in year 7 to that?
I'd say escalated for me from when I was like 13. My first arrest was when I was 13 for fare evading. Yeah, I was fare evading. I think it was like an over 60s pass or something. And yeah, I was fare evading, jumped on the train with the pass, which wasn't mine, got arrested for it. And then I'd say my second time, I got arrested for GBH and ABH. So the girls that did bully me when I was a victim on the street, I'm going to use that word, I went back and beat them up. So after a while, I kind of just worked on myself. I built myself up to make sure that nobody else could take the mick out of me again, and no one else could make me feel small. And I had to do something about it. So I took the matters into my own hands, and yeah, I went and beat the girls up.
Wow. And then could you talk a bit more about how you started selling drugs big time? So going cross country rather than just postcodes in London.
So in terms of me selling drugs, I started off as a street peddler. So my area when I was in Clapham, then it moved to, say, Brixton and Tulse Hill. So I had a pebble line, and that pebble line was 100% my line. And then a friend of mine introduced me to her sister. At this point, I was going through a lot of, I was going through a hard time in life, just generally. Housing, I was homeless. My sexuality was revealed in the end. My family didn't really do too well with just the stigma of me being a gay woman in the community. And I think for me, it led to me selling more drugs because I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to stay. So if I'm going out of town, I've got somewhere to stay. I've got a bit of money in my pocket. I'm fine. So for me, my friend introduced me to her sister. And then from then, her sister was a part of I'd say a drugs cohort, an international drugs cohort. And I'd say she recruited me into the process of becoming a drugs mule. And from then, I started to do drops around the country. So that would be Birmingham, Manchester. And then from then, it took me up to Scotland. I was based in Scotland, and I used to do drugs runs up to Scotland quite often. Yeah.
And as a woman, leaving London, taking drugs, how were you received? Were you ever threatened? Did people take the piss when you would arrive in Birmingham, Scotland?
No, in terms of that, no one ever took the piss. Reason why I say that, there's a certain grit about people from London, innit? London's very fast paced. Everywhere else is slow when you go further up. So the lingo, the language, the bravado that you're coming with, it puts fear into those people because they're not used to seeing people like myself, let alone I'm a girl that has the mentality as a boy. It's a bit of it makes people a bit hesitant to know how to approach. But yet again, I respect people. And just because I'm selling drugs, it doesn't mean you need to disrespect the clients that you have or the people that are buying the drugs off you. Everyone's going through something. Everyone has an addiction to something, innit? And through that, I'd say that's how I maintained quite a few relationships with people who took substance misuse because I was non-judgmental. So for me, when I went out of town, when I was in country, when I was doing these little drops, people looked out for me more than tried to harm me or do anything to me. Secondly, I weren't there for a long time. I weren't staying in and amongst the trap house like how we hear it to be now. Kids being sent up and over the country and one phone. I had the phone. I keep telling everybody this. I had the phone. I had the phone. I had the numbers. I weren't being shafted around in gist of someone holds the phone and you're just being run out. No, it wasn't like that in my day. So for me, I'd say there was a mutual ground of respect between both parties. The drugs was good. Your customers are not going to complain. Why do we need to have a problem? So that's kind of what it was like up there. It was different environment. It's different people. And each time it's different functionings of the levels of what people take, innit?
Inevitably, you end up getting caught selling these kind of Class A drugs.
Yeah.
Where did you get caught at 18?
I didn't get caught selling. So this is how it went. I got sent as a decoy. Yeah, so somebody on my train had way more drugs than me, but they gave me up. Yeah. So when I got to Scotland, I got to Aberdeen Station after a 13-hour journey from King's Cross. Got to Aberdeen. As I'm trying to walk out the station, an officer's just patted me on the shoulder like, do you mind to stop? I'm like, what's up? It's like, yeah, we believe you've got drugs. We believe you're carrying drugs. We've been told that you've got drugs on you. So I've just played it like, huh? What are you talking about? Carried on playing the game. Then they said they checked my stuff whilst I was there. There was nothing there. Then they said they're going to take me down to the station for a strip search. From then, it was like, I was still convinced I didn't have drugs. Even when I got into the police station, I was so convinced that I didn't have drugs. So once they've checked me in, booked me in, gone through the process of getting strip searched, they've taken me in the room and they've asked me to remove my clothes. And as I'm removing items of my clothes, drugs are just falling out everywhere. Drugs are just hitting the floor. Drugs between my toes. I got done for crack, heroin, and cannabis. Yeah.
So you were betrayed?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
I didn't know at the time. I didn't understand. I was so young and so naive. I'll use that word and I'll use it only once because I think that's the only time in my life that I feel like I've been so naive. I thought I was in control, thought I was ahead of the game. But yet again, with age, my age would not have made me understand what was to come. So there was only so much I knew.
So at 18 years old, you're a million miles away from home in a very alien place up in Scotland. You've been caught with Class A drugs. You get sentenced to 4 years in prison. What was it like the first day you get banged up in a Scottish prison?
So it isn't so cut and paste. So when I got arrested, I was in Scotland for 5 days. So I was in the cells for 5 days. Nobody knew where I was, nothing. So when I did come back to London, I had the issue and the problem of presenting myself with no money. I've got no drugs, and I've got no release paper slip, and I've got to answer to these people that think that I stole the drugs. So I'm saying I didn't steal the drugs. I got arrested, but however it was in Scotland, I only came back with like a ticket permit. I didn't get no bail papers, no nothing like that. At that age, why would I know that? I wouldn't know the severity of it. In terms of it, because I got released, I thought, oh, this is just light work. Spoke a good speech in the interview, calm, I'm out of here. 5 days, by the time I came out, I didn't even know how many days I was in the cells for. Cool. So I came back down and I had to have a meeting with the people whose drugs it was. And at first sight of the conversation, I had to pay the money back. Yeah, that was the agreement. I had a debt.
How much was it?
I couldn't even remember what it was. It could have been something like, maybe like 12 to 14 grand. I had to pay back. And that weren't the bricks cut up. That was just the bricks generally. So, because once you cut them up, the value goes even higher, innit? So at that point, it was like they're trying to do me a favor. No one's doing me a favor. I've been arrested. I haven't spoken. For me, that is it. That is it. There's no giving back. There's no paying. What am I paying? How am I getting this money to pay? So my cousin came. We had a meeting with the people. And from then, boom, I ain't paying nothing. So I didn't pay nothing. I went and did my time. But me and the people, there was a bit of tension in the community for a little while between me and these people because they generally thought I robbed them and I didn't. So I had to keep going back to Scotland because I was on bail. So I had to keep going back to Scotland to present at the court. And I got to a point where mentally, when they was telling me what the sentencing could look like and so forth, mentally my capacity wasn't there for me to appear at the next court hearing. So I went on the run for a little bit. Yeah, I went on the run. I took my time away from society. and I lived as a fugitive. So I didn't work. I didn't have anything that was declared to my name. I just stayed under the radar for about a year. And then when I felt like my mind was right, I presented myself to the court on the 7th of October when I got remanded in 2008. And that's when the journey for me started in terms of entering the justice system, understanding what prison was like, realizing that I'm about to go in a whole new place that I've got no control over. Yeah, it was scary. It was scary. Leaving everything you know to go somewhere that you don't know. And at the time, my understanding is Scotland's racist. These people are racist. So it was hard for me to digest that I'm about to go and hand myself in and sit down and do this bird. But mentally, I was ready, because any other time before that, I think it would have maybe led to me having mental health issues, because I wasn't prepared to face my punishment. Yeah.
What was that first day like in prison? Did you have a cellmate?
Yeah. So
were you the only black woman in the prison?
No, there was about 5 to 7 black women in the whole prison. So I was in a YO and I was in an adult prison. My first day, so in anybody's first day in prison as a first timer, there you go in a care bear ward. And the care bear ward is to kind of assess your mental health, to assess your mental is to assess your mental stability for you to be able to be around other prisoners. And so the first day was light. I was like, this is good. Spunked up with this girl. There was pool, there was table tennis. This ward looks so dope. I was like, yeah, I can get used to this. Shower in the bedroom, nice. Went down to dinner, and I'm looking around like, the people here look weird. But I'm not realizing that these people are the mad people. So as I'm like eating the food and that, I just kept my head down. Because when I'm looking to the left and right, you've got people with their skin like cut. You've got people's face gouged out. You've just got people they're staring. And it's scary. It's scary. It's like being in the madhouse. And I didn't understand, like, why the hell am I here in this place? So when I asked the officers and so forth, what is this process about? It's basically to assess the prisoner and their mental stability, and if they're able to handle being locked away and so forth. So that was day 1. So day 2's come now. Me and the girl that's sharing the cell, they've turned around and said, oh, we need to move one of you, look, because we got a bully on the YOs and we need to move the bully. So I'm thinking, they're moving me. Cool. Got my stuff, packed it up. These times my stuff's in a seafood bag. Headed over to the YOs. And as we've got into the YOs, they're on a bang up. They're on a 48-hour bang up because someone tried to scold a girl with sugar and water. So as we've gone down the landing, we've walked down the landing. Bottom landing's basic, top landing's standard. So as we've gone, we've hit the corner, turned to left. And as we've gone straight down the corridor, my cell was on the right. And as the officers opened the door, there's just this white girl sitting in the bed, just rocking, like, just looked stressed, depressed, curtains closed. It looked like a black cave. And I turned around to the officer and I said, I can't do this. The tear just rolled out my eyes. I said, I can't do this. She said, do you want to call? I said, yes, please. Crying. I've gone to the office, phoned my mum. Said to my mum, wow, I can't do this. She said, my girl, you got yourself into this situation, Nix. You're the only one that can get yourself out of it. Chin up, girl. And that was the first day of the sentence. And from then, I used the space as a learning ground. So the prisoners used to call me Wisey because I used to help everybody. I used to try to make everybody get along and just have a different culture of where I'm coming from. Because for me, it was a fresh start. Even though it's a negative fresh start, it's a fresh start because nobody knows me. I've got nothing to live up to. I've got no point to prove. I don't have to fight. I can just go there, keep my head down and do my time. In London, it would have been a whole different scenario because egos. And at the time I was young, so my attitude wasn't the same as how I am as an adult. So remembering and taking that in, being in London would have not helped me to learn the lesson that I needed to learn. I would have just mostly been caught up in the mix and not taking away the fact that I'm here for a punishment. I need to do the time. Let's get it done.
Prison is supposed to be a system where immediate danger is taken out of society, and then the hope is people go into prison and come out better and then reintegrate back into society. How was your experience with that? Did you feel like you came out a better person in prison? How were you treated by the prison staff?
I would say I did come out of prison a better person, but it wasn't due to the prison staff. It wasn't due to the justice system at all. It was because I got my mind right. And I'd say that in jest, because if I never got my mind right before going there, I would have struggled whilst being in there. So for me, I didn't struggle in terms of understanding why I was there. But I'd say I came out a better person because my mind was right. Mm-hmm. The prison system doesn't enable you to do anything to make yourself a better person in there. In some sense, the prison system keeps you oppressed. It keeps you reliant on the prison system. And I would say there are good officers that can see the potential in you when you see the potential in yourself. So for me, I'd say it was one of a lesson, two of understanding of yourself and how you got caught up in that situation. It also brings clarity to where you want to go when you come out of prison. But thirdly, I would say the prison staff do help to try and support that process of you moving on for those who do want to move on in a positive light. But in terms of reform, the prison system doesn't have an active program that helps women to reform once coming out of prison. So much of the time it's other prisoners supporting other prisoners when they come out. Other prisoners being there for prisoners who get left behind. It's not necessarily the prison system that helps support the prisoners in gist of them being in there and also helping them reform when they come out. So I understand when they say removing the danger from the streets and bringing them into the prison, but yet again, the danger still is left in the prison because nobody is helping or support the functionings of these individuals when they are inside the prison. So for me, it's a catch-22. You have to want the work for yourself, but also take the opportunities or anything that's given to you to help layer up the package of what you're trying to get to at the end goal.
So you serve your time in prison. You're very much left to your own devices, like you just said. What did you do on your first day out of prison? How were you going to make money? Where were you going to stay? How are you going to avoid your previous life?
So my first day out of prison, I missed a coach. I missed a coach that was 13 hours. It was a 13-hour coach journey. I missed that coach. I had to wait again till 9 o'clock in the night for the next coach to come. But in that time, I'd made friends in the prison. So we went down to, my ex-girlfriend came and met me. And it was just, everything was just different. I was all speaking like, Nikki, that's how I came back to London, speaking all the time. So I was kind of content, relaxed in the way of the Scottish way, because I'd reformed into that direction of, I would say I spent so much time in that prison. I picked up quite a lot of the culture of the Scottish people in terms of the lingo, the language, and just how the mannerism of them. So I had a friend who came and met me alongside her mum as well as my ex-girlfriend, and they lived in Glasgow. So they took us to Glasgow. So we went from Stirling to Glasgow and just chilled, hanged out with them. First time I drank Buckfast. Yeah, first time I drank that drink, smoked, and just kind of didn't want to leave this humble surrounding that I'd got comfortable in, because I was a bit, I'd say I got too comfortable. I didn't really want to leave the surrounding that I was in because I was scared to come back to London, because I had nothing to come back for. So it was like starting over again. So with starting over again, there was a lot of fears in it. Do I go back to the old life? How do I make change? How do I reach the goals that I've set out myself in prison? How do I get there? So for me, it was all new territory. And I was scared. That's just the bottom line of it. I was scared. I was scared of making the same mistakes twice. I was scared of ending back up in prison. I was scared, what's the best way and the right way for me to make money without doing something that I'm good at and what I know best? Because I was very good. And I would say for myself, I enjoyed selling drugs. So to find something else that I enjoyed, I started to struggle because I couldn't see anything around me that I enjoyed or what I liked other than making fast money, living a certain lifestyle. So for me, there was a lot of fears, there was a lot of reservations. And I say it again, my mental health also played a part in how strong it was. At the time, my mental health was weak. So I was still healing, but I was broken still. But I was in a path of trying to heal whilst being broken. And the combination just didn't go hand in hand. So when I did come back to London, I struggled. I struggled for housing. I struggled for jobs. I struggled for college. I struggled for everything in terms of the fact that I had this label of being an ex-convict.
And then to kind of pick yourself up, you enrolled into university.
Yeah.
Which university did you enroll to? What did you apply for?
I applied for Goldsmiths. So I applied for Applied Social Science, Community Development and Youth Work, JNC qualified. So I got a 2-1 in that. And I think for me, that was the making of me. The fact that I was in and around little petty jobs at the time. I went back to the youth service that we've all gone to, where a lot of us out of Brixton who are youth workers have come from Knights Youth Centre. And I went back and told Stewie, I want to go to uni. And everyone looked at me like, yeah, the job that I was working, let's forget that. What do I want to do? What can I see myself? Who am I? What's the direction? So I said to the youth work, I want to go uni. So the first week I applied. The second week I got an interview. The third week I got in. And everything else was history. So since 2013, my trajectory has been one of a 360-degree turn in terms of the life that I was coming from to the life that I'm currently leading, or the life that I desired to lead for myself. And 2013 was the start of that for me in terms of the journey beginning of Nequela Whittaker. I found myself again. All them years, I'd felt like I had an alter ego that was sheltering and protecting Nequela, because the character that Nequela is, quite sensitive, quite emotional. I'm just a loving person. But being that person in the streets, you're going to get chewed up. So Nix became that protector for Nequela. And for so many years, no one could call me Nequela because nobody knew Nequela, especially call me Nix. So when I got to uni, I started to go on that journey of finding who I really am, what I like, what I don't like, what I want to be from what I don't want to be. And I started to tell the story. So I wrote a book in uni. That was my starting place to start my book. I wrote a book called Street Girl, which highlights how I became a product of my environment, but also highlights the fact that no one tells the truth. No one tells the truth about this road life, about this drugs life. No one really gives it to you in the way that it should be said. Everyone glitz and glamours it up like it's the be and end all. You're going to live 30 years long. You're going to be selling drugs all your life. You're going to have a big fat house with a big car. No, that's a lie. That is a lie. Before that even happens, your money's either going to get seized, you're going to get arrested, or you're going to do some real heavy time, because that life isn't, that's some cartel kind of fabrication life. But no one ever tells that to people who are in that circumstance. People are running the road. We only see that side. So I thought it's time to come and show the whole picture, tell it how it is. Because if I was told it how it was, maybe I wouldn't have made so many choices, wrong choices that I had made. Maybe I would have been a bit more well advised, or I would have knew my rights. I would have knew the sentencing guideline. I would have known a little bit more to the lifestyle that I was stepping into. And I think for me, it's important that people can make their own choices, innit? But there's also letting them understand this is the reality behind them choices. So for me, it was about, it's time to be real and it's time to be heard. So that's why I'd say I brought myself to the front of the shelf, and I Rich Street Girl and self-published it in 2016 to support girls and young women who are about that lifestyle,
Nequela, you spoke a bit there about how you were a product of your environment, your childhood, where you went to school, and people you associated with. Lots of people will go through life, and that is the story they will tell themselves. You've bucked that trend of what lots of people probably can't do or don't even try to do in that situation. Let's say, I've got control of my own life, I have agency, I'm going to completely change tracks, go to university and detach myself from that previous life. How do you feel like you had to hit rock bottom, going to prison, being betrayed? Do you have to hit rock bottom to make that mental change? If you kept continuing to make good money, do you think you would have ever changed tracks?
It's a very good question, you know. Not in particular. I wanted to be the biggest drug dealer in South London. When I got my first criminal conviction, I was like, forget this. We might as well be good at being bad, innit? And that's what I wanted to do. After falling out of love with all my hobbies, after learning how people really are, after understanding world, society, and what's really going on before me, let's get money. And that was kind of my determination, is getting money. And I would say, if I never got caught when I did, I mostly would have got caught when I was older, and I would have done a lot more time. So for me, I'm quite happy So for me, I'm quite happy that I got caught when I did, because it showed me that I come from somewhere. In this time, I just got caught up. Everyone gets caught up in something. It's how you come out, innit? Some people want to stay caught up. I didn't want to stay caught up, because I knew the investment that my mum put behind me. I knew how much people I was letting down. But most of all, I was letting myself down, because I've come from being an excelling student to selling drugs on the road. I had to start and question myself. What more do I want from myself? And the be and end all of it was, I broke my mum's heart. I broke my mum's heart differently. So I had to become great in another way. And my direction of that was to change and inspire, but also be real and honest about where I've come from to where I am now, and how this journey's got me here, what this journey's looked like. Hasn't been pretty, it hasn't been easy, but what it has been, it's been real. So for me, it's capturing the then and the now, innit? And for me, I couldn't stay stuck in that person. I weren't really happy with myself neither. So I had to find change somewhere, somehow. But I'd say I had to find that self-worth, to love myself, to kind of invest in myself, because I'd say society, people troubling me, being bullied, being sexually assaulted, all these little things stripped away my confidence as a person. And I felt like selling drugs was the only thing I felt confident in doing. So for me, I needed to find a new love and fall out of love with the old things that were negative for me.
Nequela, you had this amazing kind of real roller coaster journey, like you just said. You've managed to channel all of that experience and all of that energy into working with the youth down in Brixton. Can you talk a bit more about the work you're doing and how you guys are impacting the youth?
So I manage a youth service in Brixton that supports young people who are, I wouldn't even say at risk. It supports young people that want to come to an environment and meet new friends, take part in activities, learn and grow with the youth service, have a safe space, have youth workers to communicate with, do activities, workshops, and just be amongst a community and a culture of young people that's like-minded like themselves. So I lead that service, and it helps support young people who are also at risk. So we work with those young people who are involved, active, outside, getting arrested, and working with them young people to help them see a better future for themselves, support them with their life, being that adult that's their friend and going on that journey with them, giving them that information, giving them that advice, challenging young people when they need to be challenged, because some young people feel they're bigger than their age. But I get it, because I was 13 and I was moving like I was 19. So I understand when it comes to that concept of being relatable. And I say through my experience, it's allowed me to be very relatable in the third sector in terms of youth and community, because I've got that live life experience, which is relatable to quite a lot of what the young people want to be getting up to now, or what they're involved in, or the ways that they're making money. I've been able to gain experience in many walks of life to be able to help many of these young people who feel like that's their direction. So I say that's the reason why I do this work, is to give back to young people. It's also to inspire young people that I was once like that. Would you ever believe that I'm managing services, I'm managing people, I'm doing talks, I go on, train the police, I do loads of stuff. So for someone who's got a criminal conviction, someone went to prison for drugs, it's possible. And I think that's the reassurance young people need to see in it, that there is hope, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because I'll be totally honest with you, I would have never thought I would have seen the light at the end of my tunnel, because I was so stuck in a dark hole. All I could see was darkness, year in, year out, year in, year out. So for me, when was that light even going to start to beam through? And a lot of young people feel like they're in the same situation in this current day and age. So for me, it's reassuring, realigning, and just spreading the message as much as I can that change and hope is possible, because I'm a testament of it myself. But you need to have strong pillars in the community to be able to come back and help these young people, because what we was doing 20 years ago, these young people are doing it in a whole different way now, that sometimes we might not quite understand the logic or why these young people are doing it, but just to be able to support them and have a solid space for them to be able to come into, that's the most important thing for us whilst I do this work.
Nequela, I 100% agree. I think people like you, Sheldon Thomas, who I previously spoken with, Gideon, you are the cornerstones of these communities. You are the role models. You have the experience, and younger people are going to have much more respect and more likely to listen to you than a politician in a suit or a tuxedo. We're never going to listen to them. As a final question, Nequela, if you were on a 12-hour flight, sat next to Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, people on the opposite end of a spectrum controlling the policy and not in the grassroots and in the communities, what advice would you give to those guys, people right at the top?
I've got no advice. They don't reflect my community. They don't reflect where I come from. They don't understand the issues that we face to be able to make certain decisions for us. So I don't really, they're not people I would conversate with in terms of making change. For the change that I've seen, it hasn't really rippled down to the young people that I work with that are effective. So for me, there's only there's a certain remit of how far the politician talk goes, isn't it? So for me, the conversation would be to be with pillars of the community, but yet again, it would be for them to come off their high horse, off that pedestal, and start to look down the side roads of the main roads, because majority of the time all these people get in these taxis and don't realize that there's side roads with kids and murders and estates and drug selling. Everyone just has their head focused in one way. So I would say to them, if I had anything to say, was maybe come down to the hood, see real life, understand what it's like for people who live in and amongst some of these communities. But to make decisions and you're not on the ground, yeah, we ain't got no conversation to have.
Nequela, your story is absolutely incredible. The fact that you are sat in front of these cameras recording, you're a completely changed person by the sounds of what you were describing previously. So a big thank you for the work you're doing with the community. I live in Brixton, and I can really see the type of work that you guys, Gideon, Sheldon, do in the community. Like I said, you are the cornerstones. I'm going to leave a link in the description to your book and also the youth service down in Brixton.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.